You've had all this success from like literally almost birth. But something happened when you were a little girl with a family member.
When I experienced being exposed to sexual activity at a very young age, it was through a cousin. I didn't know to put those words to it because as far as I knew, being molested or assaulted or raped or any of these things had to be an adult. It usually was a man. We think that when somebody experienced this or how somebody experienced this is what makes the experience valid. You cannot master other people. You cannot master the world. You can master how you live in it. Instead of looking at those things as things that make my life harder, I look at what make those things unique that make my life better. Life is gonna be filled with up and downs, but because I know who I am and I have my family, I'm always gonna be okay on the outside of it all.
Keke Palmer is exceptional. This is totally different level stuff here. Before I get into the show, I just want to say one thing to you. You know that all of my content is free. I put out hundreds and hundreds, it's now thousands of hours of content for free. But every once in a while, I do something where you can participate with me one-on-one or in a group. And so I've only done this one other time in my entire career, and it sold out in about 10 minutes. But this year, if you're watching this before 2025, I'm recording this in 2024, on December 12th, I'm doing an event, a group event in my home, very intimate event, less than 30 people to spend a day with me. You can go to maxout2025.com to get the information. It's not cheap, but it's a day with me. I'm going to take you through my entire 12-step system I've used for the last decade to plan my life and my year. So if you want to make 2025 the best year of your life, you can come to me and you can be in my home with me with a very small group of people for an entire day, but take you through that entire system. I'm also going to go through all the mental programming techniques that I usually only teach my one-on-one clients. So very limited seating. It may even be sold out by the time you see this video or hear this audio, but it's December 12th, 2024 in my home. maxout2025.com. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today's a great program. I already know it in advance because I finished this woman's book the last couple of days. And I got to tell you, it is something else. You're gonna make a major impact with this book, young lady. And I'm so excited she's here. She doesn't really need an introduction. I mean, she's one of the most famous women in the world. She's got 20+ million followers on social media. She's only won an Emmy. That's no big deal. Singer, songwriter, producer, author, TV host. But she's kind of like a voice for this kind of millennial generation as well. She's also the CEO of Key TV, which is a digital network, record label Big Bosses. Give me a break. All this is a very young woman, just crushing life. And she's got a new book out called Master of Me, The Secret to Controlling Your Narrative. Keke Palmer, great to have you here today.
Oh my gosh, good to be here. And I love that very charismatic introduction. Yes.
Well, it was all real. That's the good part. I didn't have to lie. So, you know what? We got like an hour on this show normally, and I cannot wait to ask you so many of these different questions. And I'm going to frame the first one because, you guys, this is not like a normal famous person kind of wrote a book with some stuff in it. This is deep, and it's going to affect your life. It's real work, and she's very vulnerable in this book. So let me tell you something about me. I'll meet you in the middle on something. I had an alcoholic dad, drug addict dad who got sober later in my life. But one of the things I confused as a little boy, and I think a lot of people confuse, is I conflated recognition or significance with love. And I think a lot of people have it. Here's what I mean by that. If I brought home a report card that had straight A's, I got love. If I hit a home run in baseball, I got love. So performing equaled love for me, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think a lot of people growing up get sort of wired this way. And as I read your work, I'm like, man, even the first chapter of the book, you talk about performing as a young person and getting affection for it. Just start talking about that and how it shaped you and whether you think that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah, so I remember being a kid and entertaining and feeling like it was a way to bring my family into the present. Growing up, living in the kind of circumstances that I lived in, parents didn't really have time to think about much of anything other than survival. They're not really that present. That's how I often felt. But there were certain things that we would do as a family that would bring them back to the presence. And one of them was speaking about how my parents fell in love, art, films, and TV. So for me, when I realized that I had a knack for that, I really loved it. Yes, because I loved it, but because it brought my family together. It gave us something to engage with in a big way. And then when I started, being a child entertainer and all that kind of stuff, the biggest stress that I had coming out of that wasn't like that I was sick of performing, but that my I had now put our lives in a place where if I no longer work again, what happens that, are we going back? I kind of became
Yeah.
afraid of
Hmm.
failing or having anything go left because I felt like I had this huge responsibility of them on my back. And even if they would say, oh, no, it's not like that, I knew deep down I was a smart kid. I'm like, well, if I stop working, guys, we put everything into my career. So now that everything is into my career, these are high stakes. And so that's where the issues began for me personally, dealing with being this high performer, as well as other people, business people in my life, constantly making me feel like I should feel away about my circumstance.
What do you mean by that? Feel away. What do you mean?
So, like, I would have people, and I talk about this a little bit in the book, where people would make me feel bad for being the financial breadwinner in my family when that's just how the cookie crumbled. And what I mean by that, just how the cookie crumbled, I mean, in order for me to be a child entertainer, people forget like your mom and dad have to take you to the auditions. They have to study your lines with you. They have to prepare you for these things. They have to take off work. Sometimes they can't have a job because they're flying across so they can be with you in Montreal because you're filming a movie with William H. Macy and you're only 10 years old. So it's like my parents had to give up a lot in order to be there for me to be able to have this career. And so a lot of people would pervert that into your parents are using you and
Uh,
just want you for money and you shouldn't be carrying your whole family and judging my parents because they ain't never been fancy folks. I have family parents still to this day where my mom's most expensive thing is a designer bag. My dad's nicest car, he only got one car. It's a bought like a bought off of a used lot Mercedes. My parents are just they always trying to get things for the low low. But growing up in the industry where a lot of people are either misunderstanding your culture and how you got to where you came, where you are,
mm,
um, or they're just trying to be manipulative so they can have power and control and authority over you. So it was a lot of people misrepresenting or trying to misrepresent to me at a very young and impressionable age my dynamic with my family. When the truth
mm.
me and my family did this together. You know what I mean? Like this is something that it wasn't just me on my own that made this happen. It was them sacrificing as well.
Well, by the way, everybody, you may not know this. This young woman got nominated for a lead actor SAG award at 10 years old, youngest ever. Just so you kind of have some perspective on what we're talking about here. Okay, I want to step out for a minute. By the way, a lot of people feel those kind of pressures from their family. Some people's pressure is different, but their mom and dad wanted them to always be a certain career, and now that they're in their 20s and 30s, they're in that career, but it's not their dream. Their dream's something else, but they're trying to live for their family. So a lot of this family stuff is a dynamic. And I hope I'm allowed to ask you this because I think when a lot of people look at you, you have this command presence about you that we'll talk about a little bit later. There's, you have this thing. Certain people have the thing, and it's more obvious in some people. You have the thing. And so it's easy to look at you. You've had all this success from like literally almost birth, right? You've been successful. So I started to research you a little bit because perfect people, there's always something in there, right? I know I had it, right? Mine was my dad and his drinking. If you don't mind talking about, because I just think it'll give people hope that they can see you as more like them,
Yeah,
Keke. But something happened when you were a little girl with a family member. If you don't
yeah.
mind touching on this, your face just changed. So, okay.
Yeah,
So,
because I felt like this is serious where you were
yeah,
going.
now we're
Where
going
you
to
were
get,
going.
yeah. Welcome to the Ed Mylett show. So, would you talk about that a little bit? Because I think for you to have to overcome, you say something about it. I'll let you say it. If you don't, I'll ask you about it again. But if you don't
Yeah.
mind sharing what happened and what impact, if any, it had on you.
So it had tons of impact on me. So when I was a kid, I grew up in a very paranoid household. Like my grandmother, she was actually assaulted by her uncle growing up. And so whenever we were very hyper aware of being abused, but the concept in which and or molested or improperly touched, it was always built around an adult. Like it could be family, but it was always an adult. And so
Mm.
for me, when I experienced being exposed to sexual activity at a very young age, it was through a cousin. I mean, I was like 5 and my cousin was probably like only 3 years older than me. So she was also a young person. Um, and I remember just feeling it was too much. It was what you feel when you have been molested, or you have been improperly touched, or something has been introduced to you that you shouldn't have been introduced to. And it really plagued me for like my childhood. I felt a lot of shame. I felt like I had over sexualized thoughts. I felt like I didn't know. I just felt everything that you would associate with having been sexually abused, but I didn't know to put those words to it, because as far as I knew, being molested or assaulted or raped or any of these things had to be an adult. It usually was a man. It was like all these specific things that
Mm.
wasn't my experience, even though I had that feeling and that emotion. And so when I was around 12, I was in school, and you're in school, you're reading different kinds of books. I think this could be, I don't know what book it was, maybe been physical education or something like it, just a regular book. And I was reading, and they had an area in it about sexual abuse, sexual assault. And they mentioned what happens when you have been molested, particularly. And I said, well, these are all the symptoms and all the responses. And in that moment, I kind of associated what I had experienced, or what I had started to think and feel, not with
Yes.
myself, but with what I had been through. I realized, oh, this is a natural. It's like if you get a cut on your arm, you know, the scab is in response to that. It's not just you. And so I
Wow.
think you experience abuse in that way. Like I remember being so young, like when I was like 5, and me and my family, we always was in church, and all I knew to do was pray. I just prayed, prayed, prayed. When I tell you, it was crazy. I'm so glad that I had something like that in my life, because I, as a little bitty girl, was way too many emotions, and I didn't know how to, tell my parents. I didn't know I was little. And so I just remember, I prayed. I said, I remember being like 5 and 6 years old, being like, God, remove these thoughts, remove these thoughts, remove these thoughts,
Mm.
remove stuff from me. And then eventually they went away. And then I didn't revisit that place again until I read that book. And, I remember I just kind of ran in there to my mom and told my mom, and I don't think she understood exactly what I was saying. But that was the first time that I had uttered anything like that
Mm.
loud and put words to it. And then and then I think for me, what I'm learning and why I spoke about it in my book, and why I speak about any of the things that I experienced in my book without sensationalizing the event, um, really is to say that when you experience trauma, it's not about dwelling on the things you can't change. Because I think I used to wonder, like, who would I be had I not experienced that? Would I be different? Would I be this? Would I be that? It's not about that, because I'm never going to be different. I'm never going to not be the person that experienced that. So what
Mm.
I have to then do from that is learn as much as I can about what it means to have experienced that. What can be the effects of that? What am I attributing to me that is actually an attribute to that experience? Whether I'm nervous, concerned, feel shamed, unsure of who I am, who I want to be, my choices, all of that can be in response to that. And so I wanted to speak about it, because I think so many of us have either been traumatized and we don't know, or traumatized and blame ourselves. We experience so much in this life. It's like you're not going to come out unscathed. And so the quicker that we can start getting into the dialogue of that, the better it is, especially with these kinds of situations. Because when I talk about it, people will say, like, since I had spoken about this, which, I spoke about it in my first book, but I think that it's maybe I talked about it in more detail in this second book, or just I've had more conversations out loud about it. But a lot of people say, I remember that. You know what I mean? Or, oh yeah,
Mm.
as a kid, they would call it playing house, or this happened to me too. Or, and it's, again, it's some of these things that we don't bring light to.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a community where your parents are working all the time and people don't have a moment to stop, and kids are not being watched. These are the kinds of things that can happen. And when you think about, like, that was at the age where Cinemax was one click away. So now you have kids having access to stuff on TV, and then they're trying something out, and you know what I mean? It's like all of this stuff that
Yep.
we just haven't spoken about.
You're right. I'm really glad you did. I think you said something before. You just said there, like, you may not even know something happened to you or why it affected you. Like what you said, it didn't fit the picture of what being molested meant. It wasn't a dude, wasn't like your uncle or some dude in a van. It was another young person. Yeah. And it's interesting. The reason this work matters, y'all listening to this, I'm reading your stuff, and I've always had this, I can't believe I'm saying this on the show today, but I'm going to say it. Somewhere in junior high, I had this weird incident with a coach. I was changing in the locker room. I'll never forget this. Like, I was changing, and I won't say the dude's name, but I was changing, and I was the last boy out. So it was just me and him. It was after a game. And I remember him like coming up and kind of like tickling me. You know what I mean? Like funny, tickling me by the door. But you ever have like something in your life, everybody? Like I remember that. And I can't quite process right now why I remember that. And I'm 53. But there's a damn reason why I remember that. And maybe I blocked something. Maybe it was just that violate. But I'm just giving you one example from my life, everybody. And it's worth sometimes just evaluating your life. Why does that stand out? Like, of all the things that's ever happened to me, did something more than that happen that day? Was it just a violation that the dude was... But the point that I'm making to you is you could have some trauma in your life and just awareness that something was wrong. Or like, I know now at 53, I would be running up tickling some 12-year-old boy, like, you know what I mean? In his underwear, changing.
You felt that it was a boundary encroached upon. And it's as simple
Exactly.
as that. It's as simple as that. And it could be at different areas of work, of based off of whatever that felt like. You know what I mean? It didn't have to be, and that's the thing. I think a lot of time we think what we experience have to be what we've seen in the movies. And the movies are just trying to illustrate the emotions and the feelings of what we experienced in real time. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of times it takes us, it's a delayed response. I mean, I've been raped before, but I'm thinking to myself, was I, in the time, I'm not knowing because I'm thinking, well, this is my friend and we were hanging out, but this drink that they gave me, I don't really feel the same. I feel like I can't really move. So what happened as a more adult person? You look back and you say, wow, this is what happened. And I feel like it's so important to express and speak about these nuances on these topics because we are so afraid of hearing these words. We're so shocked when we hear these words, and we think that when somebody experienced this or how somebody experienced this is what makes the experience valid. You could be in an abusive relationship. Just because you don't have a black eye doesn't mean it wasn't abusive. You know what I'm saying? You could be raped just because that was your friend or your husband or your boyfriend. It doesn't mean that's not what happened. You know what I mean? And so I think same molestation, just because it was not this adult or this crazy enraged situation, it doesn't mean that you were not improperly touched. And so, it's important because I feel like so many of us walking around, hair looking good, makeup on point, attitude out the bag, and you would assume that nothing have ever happened to them, or you don't even remember that something have happened to you. And so I think it's important, and I feel like it's like one of those things where we gotta say, hey, these things can happen, and how do we move forward from that?
Well, that's why the book's so good. By the way, so thank you for that. That was one of the coolest things we've done on the show in a long time right there, than what you just said. By the way, I'm really sorry that, some dude violated your trust like that. It's just disgusting and horrible. And a lot of times when those things happen, we, as a human being, we go, well, what was my part of it?
For sure.
Well, I shouldn't have been sitting so close to him. Shouldn't have, no, someone's not supposed to do that, right? That's not you, that's them. But the reason this matters is self-awareness is just a huge part of success and happiness. Like, I kind of get why I'm the way I am. Now, you don't have to spend your whole life in analysis, right? That's not the case. But kind of knowing yourself is important. So what makes a leader? It's a tough question, but one thing's for sure. A true leader leads by example, and a true leader takes risks too. They plunge into life with determination. For those who lead by example and who approach life with a palpable passion, there's the Range Rover Sport. Each Range Rover Sport model offers a dynamic, sophisticated take on sporting luxury. The Range Rover Sport offers focused on-road performance and world-renowned off-road capability with industry-leading features like adaptive off-road cruise control that monitors ground conditions and acclimates to the present terrain. Agility, control, and composure are achieved with dynamic air suspension, and adaptive dynamics reduces unwanted body movements to deliver smooth and composed handling. True sophistication and excellent maneuverability, all in a seriously stylish package. Sophisticated refinement meets visceral power in the Range Rover Sport, a new dimension of sporting luxury. Build your Range Rover Sport at LandRoverUSA.com. It's an interesting title of the book, Master of Me. There's a lot of connotations with that, by the way. But why'd you call it that? And what does that actually mean? Because you've clearly, to some extent, mastered you with all of these things in your life that have been successful, and really didn't even have a childhood like a normal one. So what does Master of Me mean, and how does one begin to do that?
Master of Me, the reason why I chose Master of Me is because I was thinking about, like, I got the power, and I was like, what would be in my like, I feel empowered. I feel strong. I feel like I'm in the driver's seat of my life. What would I call that?
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, a master. I feel like I'm a master. I'm the master of me. And I was kind of like brainstorming because I was thinking about what I wanted to call my book and what this era of my life represented. And then that in itself kind of sparked my personal dialogue with me on
Hmm.
going deeper into why and how I got to this place that even with every crazy situation, good, bad, the in between that I've experienced,
Hmm.
it was the mastery of how I dealt with that. And that's kind of what we're talking about before.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But it goes through every aspect of your life, whether it's personal and intimate relationships or working relationships or externally living and existing in the world and whatever group that you feel, attaches whatever kind of concepts to. It's the
Hmm.
way that you master existing in that allows you to move forward in life, because you cannot master other people. You cannot master the world. You can master how you live in it. And I think for me as an entertainer, I was often put, especially as a kid, often put in this no. I knew from the beginning that me and my family had a plan to get up out of poverty. And I had a skill, I had a talent, I had something I loved. But the real gift was bringing people together. And I never ever saw the last stop being just entertainment. I always saw it being something greater, because entertainment just feeds me. Being a performer just feeds me. And I can divvy that out as much as I can to my community. But there's something greater there that I can do with the ability to bring
Hmm.
people together, because that's really what I do as a performer. I bring people together, whether I'm hosting Password and the family is hanging out, or I'm doing a movie like Healing the Bee and you don't even realize it's a sports movie because it's so built into community. Whatever it is, I'm bringing people together. And so for me, it was important to say with this book that, you know, this has always been a part of our program. There was never a point in time where I was not aware or autonomous in my decision to maintain in this industry, to do my family business, to work hard like this, to be Keke Keep a Bag Palmer. You know what I mean? The person that is hustling for something greater. I'm not a puppet. I'm the
Hmm.
master. And I think that's
Hmm.
so important. I always felt so irritated by that as a kid because people kept seeing me like that. It was just so hard to combat, because you're a kid and everybody thinks they know the answers, and it was just too much. And so I think dealing with that and experiencing that, and then also experiencing that just as like a black person and a black woman, and everybody always is just like, win, 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 win. And it's like, no, 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 not win, 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 win. I know what's going on. I know who you are. I know what you think of me. It doesn't bother me because I know who I am. And I might use what you think of me against you and get further because of that. So, no, 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 it's not that way. And so for me, I think that was a big aspect of what I wanted to make sure was in the book from my personal standpoint, but also to really illustrate to anybody that you are control of your narrative. No one can tell you how you choose to feel about something. And the reality is, facts can be there, right? If the fact is, you know,
Hmm.
this is a cup, but how I feel about that cup, that's up to me. So I don't choose to believe this is a cheap cup. I choose to believe this is a cost-effective cup. This is a cup that allows me to drink the same way a glass cup would, but I chose this one because this is cost-effective, it's biodegradable. You get to decide how you
Wow.
feel about me.
Let me ask you a question. I want to stay on that. I want to pretend I know something I don't. So you went that wah, 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 wah thing, right? You rubbed your eyes. If people listen to it on audio, is what you were saying there that it could be true that there's you're not born on third base, but the fact, so you can accept that something's true, but not believe that you're a victim because of it. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. That's what
Okay.
I'm saying. Because we all up against something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can tell you about me, okay? I've experienced some harsh things. I grew up as a child entertainer. I'm a black person. I'm a woman. Whatever that you could say that would be like, ooh, that could be tough. But instead of looking at those things as things that are make my life harder, I look at what make those things unique, that make my life better, that make me sharper, that make me think differently, that give me a different perspective, that makes me more ahead than the next person because they don't have my life experience. And I think that's important that we all do that. And it seems really difficult, but that is how you master yourself, because what mastering yourself truly is mastering your mind. It's mastering
Mm.
your mind and deciding how you choose to think about things. Look, I don't know when the lights cut out if God is going to be standing there saying, Keke, welcome, baby girl. I don't know. None of us know because ain't none of us died and came back. But if I've got to think about and believe something, I'm gonna believe the shit that makes me think something good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
choose to believe something that's gonna make me get up and keep going every day in this matrix that we got to live in.
Oh my gosh. In my book, I'm not comparing books, but the second chapter of my book is about that matrix. I call it the matrix. I use the same term and I talk about your mind, even a part of your brain called the RAS, which we're not going to get into today, but like I completely agree with you on that. And so you use the word narrative. Part of my work is I really believe that we as humans will do everything in our power to live in congruency or consistently with the story we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And that thing you said a minute ago, I don't want it to slide by everybody. It would be easy to say, well, I'm a black woman. I was young. I had this. I had a sexual issue when I was young. And so because of that, I'm out of the game. It's not going to win. Or in my case, not the same extent, but I had welfare when I was a little boy. Dad was a drug addict and alcoholic. Not the same thing, but I could make my own story up as to why I'm okay justifying being average or ordinary or screwed up myself. So that part of the work in the book is about this narrative. What's one thing you wish every human being knew?
That all the heroes have trauma. All of them. That's
Mm-hmm.
why narrative and storytelling is so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we want, that's if people want to know why Marvel movies are so popular and even more popular now is because people feel like, yeah, my aunt passed away. I didn't have my parents. I'm an orphan like Harry. I'm a, so and so like whoever. Like I'm an outcast like Deadpool. I don't fit the system. Whatever it is, like that's the point of it. Like it's hard to believe sometimes when you're living in that, you know what I mean? Because your mind is telling you, everything is telling you that you're not the one, you're not going to make it. But Oprah Winfrey isn't Oprah Winfrey because of who she is today. She's who she is because of who she was in that small town before she could believe that she was going to be Oprah Winfrey. She was the girl that went through all that trauma, all that hardship. And that's what made us love Oprah's because she was somebody that was imperfect. And anybody that you love, anybody that has become inspiration, Tyler Perry, he lived in his car for years in New Orleans, okay? Grew up in a hard home, didn't have a lot, and now he's one of the richest people in America. So it's like, that's the truth. The truth is, and I remember being a kid and looking at entertainers and saying, when I thought about what I had gone through, so and so went through that. That means I'm amazing.
Hmm.
That means I'm going to be great. I would actually tell myself that because of any of the hardships that I'd gone through, what I'd been through, that's why I was going to get where I was going. Because
Hmm.
that's the truth about heroes and people that do something greater than themselves. It's because of the trauma. That it's that alchemizing of that
Wow.
hardship that brings them to where they are.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I told you this isn't like you just talking to some actress that wrote a little book. You know what I mean? Like this is the real stuff. I wonder, I know it's in the book, but I'm going to phrase it a certain way. You kind of, as an actress, and I have enough friends that have done this young, that have become, been in the industry a long time. It's easy to become like a perfectionist in your industry,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Okay. And the pressure to be perfect. And there's one thing I see cost most people their dreams, forget acting, forget singing, forget producing. I'm talking about life. It's this notion that they're going to wait around to get started until they're perfect, or they're afraid of making mistakes because of perfection. And you're pointing at me like you agree if you're on the audio. So will you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, that is the most crippling thing in the world. That
Mm,
is super duper crippling. And it's like, it's what we call when we say like perfectionism really is the fake face of procrastination. And I
yeah.
try to tell people all the time that that's actually how you get where you're gonna go is through trial and error. You have to do the thing. Like I remember thinking back when I first started doing like my dance videos, or even when I started doing Lady Miss Jacqueline. It's this character that I do on my social media, and
Mm,
people would be in the comments like, what the is this? Because it was like trippy looking little videos at first. Then
right.
eventually it went from like a little sketch to like a full length story to then a book with Amazon to then a one. I
Wow.
mean, they have gone so far, but I'd use that as an example here to say, like, if I would have just said to myself, oh, it ain't perfect, I can't do it, waiting for the money, waiting for the crew, waiting for I don't even know, then I would have never had a moment of growth. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm,
people got to be ready for growth. You have to have the opportunity to do something, so then you can look at it. You can read, okay, let me figure out how to do this, how to be a better producer, how to be a better writer, whatever the framework of what it is you're doing. If it's a
mm,
product, if it's a book, you got to write one for you can tell yourself it wasn't good enough.
mm.
So I
That's
think
so
it's like
true.
people have to know that, it's like one of those things where it's a part of the process.
Hmm.
You cannot beat the process. You have to actually go through, and learn and watch and see. That's to me like a big part of it. So in my mind, I think I've always had a really good support with my mother.
Mm,
Always reminded me of this, where it's like, just do it. Just do it. And if it doesn't work out, you don't have to put it out. And if it does, then that's good. And also I speak a lot about investments. I think, in the book I talk a lot about being an entrepreneur, and that doesn't always mean you're sitting on a bunch of cash. I think the conversation around entrepreneurialism has to change, because you do need to be an entrepreneur in this day and age. And it doesn't mean
mm,
you're sitting in the office of a building that you made. It's not this big, gigantic thing. It really means a diversified portfolio. And the reason why
mm.
you need this is because you need to have personal autonomy and not feel completely crushed by the capitalistic overlord that we're all existing in. But if you have multiple avenues for work, it makes it easier to say no to things you don't want to say no to. And those multiple avenues don't have to be desk jobs, or they can be. You can have a 9 to 5, but then do Uber on the weekends. Or
Right.
you can work in a hair salon part-time and then go work as a teacher's aide. It's about, I'm working right now on a movie, and my prop guy also is a substitute teacher. He's
Hmm.
an entrepreneur. That may not
Yeah.
be the faces that you're thinking when you're thinking entrepreneur, but that's an entrepreneur. And the reason why you have those jobs is so that when you do want to do something that you're not 100% sure in, you can weigh the cash balance for the investment. And you can say, well, if I'm going to put $5,000 into this idea, I have that to lose. And
Yeah.
I can have this backup job or this backup thing. And I know this plan is going to happen. And when I get, my money's worth, if it's a picture, a painting, a movie, a short film, whatever it is you're doing with that $5,000, you can look and you can see and you can weigh the options of how you maybe are going to get your money back. Or if this is going to be a proof of concept where you can go get some money from somebody else.
Hey everyone, Dave Meyer here to tell you about Laurel Road. Laurel Road is a digital banking platform and brand of KeyBank that provides tailored solutions to support the financial well-being of healthcare and business professionals. In April 2019, Laurel Road became part of KeyBank, which is one of the nation's largest bank-based financial service companies and a member of the FDIC. Laurel Road's banking and lending solutions include student loan refinancing, mortgages, personal loans, student loan cashback credit cards, tailored savings accounts, and more. And right now, for just a limited time, Laurel Road's high-yield savings account has an annual percentage yield greater than 4%. That's up to 10 times the national savings rate. And the nice part about this digital account is that it features 0 monthly service fees, no minimum balance requirement, and costs $0 to open. With perks like that, you'll be seeing results and better buying power for your buck in no time. Visit laurelroad.com/pockets to learn more and see other ways they can benefit you. Tell them Bigger Pockets sent you. Laurel Road, your partner on the road to financial peace of mind, equal housing lender, member FDIC.
See, one of my favorite parts of the book is this part, actually. And I want to ask you about that. Like, for me, being an entrepreneur, I can't sing and I can't act. Well, I've done a little acting, but I definitely can't sing. And so part of my entrepreneurial journey, I've had lots of different businesses, but it's sort of like my art form, a way to express myself too. So like driving Uber, if that was my second, that's a way to hustle to generate cash. But like, I also encourage people, like, create a future for yourself. If you have a job you don't like, do something on the side.
That's right.
That like gets you interested, gives you passion, gives you juice, gives you the possibility of a brighter future, right? Maybe it's a form of expression. Maybe it's a problem you solve. Maybe it's just something to keep you interested and get off of Netflix, right? But go do something. The other thing you're real about, though, and I think a lot of people look at you or someone like you that's been successful in your industry and think, man, they're loaded. But there's stops along the way where most people probably wouldn't know. You can have financial struggles and still be crushing in your career at the same time too, right? So talk a little bit about that. This will surprise people when they hear this.
You definitely can, because this is it's a business still. So what I mean by that is, in order for my brand to be the Keke Palmer brand, I employ a lot of folks, so that means that as much money is coming in is as much money is coming out. And so, yeah, when I was about 18, 19, my cash flow and my cash out ratio were wildly different, because I had finished a show. I was no longer having a consistent check from that TV show, but all the expenses I had for my house and my team was all still the same, because, as an actor, you're used to not having a job, but after a while, you're kind of like, okay, a job should have come by now. And that's not what was happening for me. And it was really, really difficult. I had to downsize with my family. I had to rethink things, but I learned a very valuable lesson, which is, again, at that time, I wasn't really living above my means, but I learned to live really under my means. Because when you do have an independent contractor job, when you do have a freelance job like I do as an entertainer, you only have a job if somebody hires you. It's important to live under your means. What I mean by that is, like, if you got $100,000 in the bank, then your house should be like $1,500 a month.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yes. That's how under I mean, because if something happens that you don't expect, right? It could be a health thing. It could be I'm just not getting booked. It could be COVID. Remember COVID happened? Everybody was out of work. You need to be prepared for that. And I learned that lesson. That was the biggest thing for me, was learning to live extremely under my means so that I could prepare for any weird thing happening and still have enough cash saved that if my cash flow was impacted, I would not suffer. Because, I think that when it comes to any industry, when you are your own boss to a certain degree, I have different companies that I work with, but essentially I'm my own boss.
Yep.
Well,
you have to live way below your means. I just want to jump in on this. That's a book, by the way.
Yeah.
Because you're so successful already and you think so clearly. I don't think, by the way, this is different if you're living at the poverty line. I get all that. Even then, you need to do it. But so I'm not talking about someone who's, they're just trying to pay their apartment rent right now. No matter what they do, they can't scale it down any lower. I know there are people listening to the show, watching it, that are in that place. I have also been in that place as a busboy and a bagger at a grocery store. I get all that. Even then, stop with Starbucks. You don't need to have Netflix. Like, learn to save $20 a month. But the thing she just said, you guys, about extremely below your means is so counterculture. Most people live above their means or barely below it. And the margin for error in your life financially is so thin. It's just a matter of time before you flame out. You lose your job, something happens. Go ahead.
I'm saying that's way too dangerous. What you're saying 100% true, and it's way too dangerous, and it leaves no room for you to really be in charge. You really then become a slave to the companies, because you need the money. You have no freedom of choice because you don't have that financial support. And so, I do think people assume, because, again, if you're not thinking from that point of view, you would not understand how somebody with, let's say, $1 million, how that could not really be enough money if they have their own business. You know why? Because if they have a place where their people can come into the office, they're paying the bill on that. They're paying the bill on their home. If they have a kid, they're paying for their kid to have everything that they need. Then at that point, that $1 million goes probably down to, I would say, 700,000. Then they have what the taxes that they're going to be doing. That 700,000 immediately goes down to like 300,000, 400,000. And then from there, they've got to pay all the people that they're working with. So it's like that money goes faster than people assume. You know what I mean? I think when we hear these big numbers, we immediately assume that means that person is profiting all of that. Or, people go online and they look at all that net worth and they assume that that's what that person has sitting in that bank. That's not the case, at least not for me. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's also true when people say, I exited my company for $80 million. Okay, how much debt did they have on it? How many other investors were there? And you hear these stories online, they exited for $100 million. I'm like, they got $4 million. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. That's the difference between reality and branding and publicity.
You're so right.
Publicists are a thing. I didn't speak on it too much in this book, but like, publicists, honey, they one of the best authors when it comes to narrative storytelling. They'll tell you your app's a tale, and you'll believe some. I remember when they did the Essence cover for Raven, and she always talks about how they said she's worth $400 million. And she was like, the part they forgot to say was Disney was worth $400 million with my
Right.
brand, not
Yeah.
me. And it's like,
Yes.
that's the thing where we see all these, tabloids or headlines, and we assume that that's exactly what it is. But
This
anybody
is one of the realest things ever talked about on my show is what we're talking about. I've never heard this covered on a podcast ever. Like the amount of people that you think have a lot of money because of what they make or what they exited for is so grossly incorrect. By the way, I'm about to do a podcast when we're done here. I'm shooting a solo episode. Check this stat out. There's very few people in the country that actually make $1 million a year. You're talking about like 0.5% ever make $1 million a year, right? Guess what else is common with that group of people? 7 times or 10 times the amount of bankruptcies as people that don't make $1 million a year. So they end up going bankrupt more often than people that don't make $1 million a year. So the reason all this matters, you guys, why are we both telling you this? You may not be as far behind as you think. There's some real realities with being an entrepreneur. And if you will live extremely below your means, go ahead. I want you to finish that thought. Extremely below, you're setting yourself up to succeed.
You're setting yourself up to succeed, because even some of these companies that you think are rich, they're trillions of dollars in debt. So it's like, don't let that be a marker for where you stop, or you know what I mean? Like these, again, this is a part of the process. Falling, but it's getting back up again. It's always the recovery that makes everything the difference. It's not what happened, it's how you recovered from it.
So good. You guys got to get the book, by the way. You got to get the book. And by the way, I'm going to give you the title of it again, and then I got like a couple more things I want to ask you about. This has been so good. So grateful we made this happen today.
What sign are you?
I'm a Taurus.
Okay, one of my perfect matches, Earth sign. I'm Virgo.
See, there you go. Oh, I actually, Taurus and Virgo are good matches. I actually have been told that before. Master of Me, you guys, the secret of controlling your narrative, and the narrative controls everything. Okay, part of the narrative, though, I don't think people you get a little hate when you're not doing anything. You use the word backlash in the book. So once you try to kind of break out from where you are in your life, by the way, your industry is like, oh my gosh, probably worse than anywhere with backlash. So like, what would you tell somebody who's like, all right, you know what? I'm going to start mastering my life. I'm going to step out and do something. What would you tell them about what's coming if they do from other people?
Just people putting limitations on you. And the most time, I think the best part that you can do is not take it personal. And I know that is like a cliche thing. Don't take it personal, because it feels personal. But you really do have to resist the urge, because when you resist the urge, then you're able to inform yourself on the real reason as to why they're responding that way. And then now that weight is pushed off of you, that it's no longer being projected onto you, because what they're actually projecting onto you are their limitations. What do I mean by that? Well, if I've told myself all my life that because I'm this and because I'm that, I'll never be anything, and you become it, well, now I have to be accountable to me. So now I have to tell you something that's going to stop you, that's going to thwart your success, that's going to make you question or second guess, for the simple fact that I need to know that I didn't waste my life believing the lies that people told me. And so then at that point, it's kind of sad. And then you have compassion for them. You can wish them well and you can move on, because that's usually what happens. I've realized that, and I've gone through it many times in my life, where my jumping into a new thing and me being a multi-hyphenate, or me deciding to host and also be a actor that is a steady working, that apparently not being possible or not being okay. All those different things. I've experienced people telling me that for whatever reason they weren't going to work, or they weren't going to be possible, or this wasn't thing, that wasn't thing. But the other thing you have to remember too is that nobody knows what your journey is and what you're headed to do. People don't have the idea for you that you have for yourself. And that's why your relationship with the companies and the people that you work with has to be very clear on what you're coming there to get. Are you coming there to get a check? Are you coming there to build a relationship? Are you coming there to build a relationship and get a check? Are you coming there to get in good with the company that they're working for? What is your angle? And so for me, my angle has always been to build a brand that I can establish enough to get access points that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise unless I went to some Ivy League college, so that I could really be, the boss of something. So I could really be able to extend my brand to help my community, to build greater narrative stories that could help uplift my community. It was always to be from an observer standpoint. I never wanted to just be Mickey Mouse. I always wanted to be Walt Disney. So when people would be talking to me about what I needed to do and they were thinking that I was trying to be talent. So you're wrong. My dreams are so much bigger than what your dreams are for me. So that's the other thing is, people are projecting onto you their ideas and their limitations.
Mm-hmm.
B, or two, is people don't know what you see for yourself.
Mm.
So your trajectory, your timeline, your path is built by you. That's your personal blueprint based off of where you're trying to go, not where they think you should go. I mean, a lot of people their highest goal for me was to win an Oscar. I don't need to win an Oscar. It's great if I win an Oscar, but that's not my that's the goal for somebody that maybe just wanted to be an actor, and even just a really profound dramatic actor, I guess, because
Mm.
it doesn't mean what it means to you that it means to me. I would
Mm.
much more rather be somewhere in a position where I can give opportunities, the
Mm.
opportunities that I needed. You know what I mean? Be in a real position, not be the player on a game, but be the coach, be the
Yeah.
actual owner of the team. That was my thought process.
Well, that's what you're doing. What do you think makes people happy? I'm just curious. You and I are both blessed that we know a lot of people that a lot of people think they would want to know, right? And one of the things that kind of struck me a little bit as I, started doing the show and getting to know people, I don't know that people with a lot of money are any happier than people without. What do you think? One, do you agree with that? Did it surprise you even as a little girl when you would meet some of these actors or whatever, or producers, that kind of their attitudes, their real happiness level, A, and then B, what makes them happy? What makes people happy?
I 100% agree with you. You know, I mean, money takes away some problems that maybe affect your happiness, but money does not make you happy. And I remember people always would say that too about like dating and stuff like that. Get you a man that, trust me, the man that make a lot of money is a asshole just as much as the one that don't. You know, people are people. It's an individual thing. It's not about the money they have in their pocket or not. So I think a lot of things make people happy. One thing that I think makes people happy that we're missing a lot, especially in these times where, yeah, people want to make it, and it's pushing a real, when I say a capitalistic mind, I'm meaning like a super like independent mindset, you know what I'm saying, where you're just thinking about yourself. And again, this society, the level of poverty that people are living in, I understand and I get it. But what really makes people happy to me, one of the things is community, a real sense of community. Having people that you sacrifice for, that sacrifice for you, people that you are, that you have that you love, that you care about, that y'all are going through things together, that have your back and you have their back. It's like the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because you are, and you are because I am. This sense of communal love. I think we need more of that. And it's lost in this fight to the top. You end up on that mountain alone. And that's why your ass is unhappy. I think another thing is people's sense of value. People are happy when they feel valued. But because we live in such a consumerist, again, Western culture, and everything is told that happiness is outside of us, and value and attachment to that is outside of us. But that's not true. You don't necessarily want that outfit or want that new body or want this new thing because you really want it. You want it because you want to feel a value. And no one can really tell you. This is when it gets difficult, right? On what makes me happy is only you can figure out what makes you feel a value in a real level. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to feel a value in your beauty. Well, that might be dependent upon you and how you're loving yourself and giving to yourself. Not just like what superficially, but truly, are you doing the things that you wanted you to do? Those are the really big questions that I think a lot of people don't want to ask, that end up making them just make the easy way, the easy cut. Okay, well, really, it's not because I got to do this inner work and I got to be accountable to me. It's really because I need that new hairdo. It's really because I need that new makeup. It's really, they're just easily going towards something that's going to be a quick pacifier to the real deeper issue. So the sense of value, which comes from building self-worth and esteem and choosing yourself in every scenario, I think that's also what makes people happy. Yeah, and I think, and accountability, which is, again, a lot of these are in connection to itself, but being accountable to oneself, that's always going to make your ass happy. Always.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this last. By the way, I've enjoyed this so much. We kind of went a little bit deeper than even I knew we were going to. You're outstanding. You're outstanding.
So are you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Are you happy? And when have you been the happiest in your life? Like, truly, like right now, are you happy? Or is there another time you're like, I was most happy then?
I do honestly believe that I'm the most happiest in my life right now. And the reason why I would say I'm the most happiest in my life right now is because so much terrible shit have happened. And what I mean by that is when hard shit happens in your life, it's almost like a situational accelerator. Like it pushes you, it pushes you, forward. You know, shout outs to Boots Riley. He gave me that word. Because I think it forces you to be real. Either you cannot be real or you can accept the task and be real and see and look at what you needed to look at and learn. And I think for me, I went through a lot with after having my son and just, having so much things out in the public. Now, if you would have told me any of that would have been happening, or I would be sharing or talking and experiencing any of the things I was experiencing in the last few years, if you had told me that at 16, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I'd kill myself. Like I would be mortified, horrified. Yeah. But because I embraced the reality, and I did not pull back, I said, what is God showing me? What is the universe trying to show me? What do I have to learn? How do I lean into this? How do I move through this? How do I accelerate through this situation and come out on the other side? Once I did that, I was happy. I think that brings me to another thing. It's like not lying to yourself. You cannot lie to yourself. I don't care if you lie to other people. You ain't got to tell them all your business, but don't lie to yourself. Do not lie to yourself. And I think this is a situation that, again, turning 30, being 31, experiencing all these things, I think it would have been real easy to just lie to myself.
Yeah.
But I didn't lie to myself. And that was me being accountable to me. And that made me feel of value. You know what I'm saying? Then I had my community and they showed up for me. So I had my community. I had value based off of the way that I was showing up for myself. I was accountable to me. I wasn't lying to me. And I'm happy. Now, does that mean that I'm always smiling and that every day is a perfect day and I'm always in a good mood? That's not what happiness means. It's still an emotion at the end of the day. Really, what I feel is contentment, and I feel security in my life, and I feel gratitude in my life because of everything I've gone through. I'm able to sit back and be thankful and be grateful and know that life is going to be filled with up and downs. But because I know who I am and I have my family, I'm always going to be okay on the outside of it all.
Wow. You're exceptional. Like I could listen to you all day. There's a way that you speak that I really like listening to, but I really like what you say. And your level of wisdom, I mean, you're an old soul with like a young spirit. I mean, just the level of wisdom at your age, like if you're not all watching this, you know who she is, but like you're talking about a young woman here to have this much wisdom. You just lived a lot in 30 something years. You've lived a lot. And it's obvious. I also just want to tell you, just because I do this part of this for a living, you need to be on stages speaking too.
Oh my God, that's such an honor. Thank you for saying it. Thank you for all the words that you're saying, because man, I got to tell you that this is the type of stuff I love to do. You know what I'm saying? Like when I'm acting or whatever I'm doing, it's a version of me being able to bring us to these kinds of conversations. Like this is what I live for. What else are we doing if we're not talking about this? We got to talk about the real man.
Yeah. Well, you're capable of it. What this today was a situational accelerator for a whole bunch of people who listen to it. I'm stealing that for sure too. So Keke Palmer is exceptional. I already knew that as an actress and as a person who can sing and produce, but like this is totally different level stuff here. So thank you for today so much.
No, thank you. I'm coming back in person, man. You got to make sure my seat is ready. We got to. I told you. Next time it's mandatory in person. All right, y'all, go follow her on social. Master of Me. Go get it. The Secret of Controlling Your Narrative. It's so good. You can tell. By the way, we barely touched on the book, so there's a bunch to go read as well that we didn't cover here on the show. God bless you, everybody. Max out.